We have covered a lot of topics in this course, and these skills that you have learned should be able to take you through 95% of the ideas for product videos that you'll be working with. But then there is that 5% when you have a background video that probably has glass in it, or a mirror, or a reflective floor, like if it's a shiny tile floor. You need to know how to deal with that, because if you just do your camera tracking, put your CG object in the scene, do some quick nice color correction, compositing and whatnot, and you don't account for the reflection, it's not a totally finished job. It's like a dead giveaway for anyone that has the eyes that there is something wrong with this shot. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about compositing reflections, where to find the reflection pass, how to handle the entire process in Blender, doing the compositing within Blender, and doing it within Davinci Resolve. So let's get to it. So this is the background video we're going to be working with. You can see there is a giant glass mirror in the scene, and if we have any object in the scene in the line of the reflection of this mirror, we should be able to see that object in the mirror, because I'm sure there are some trees way over here in the distance that we are seeing in the reflection of the mirror. So if we have our object somewhere around here, we should also be able to see it in the mirror. So let me show you how to handle that in Blender. We have a fresh Blender project here. Let's come up here, VFX, motion tracking, because our video is in motion. Then let's drop in the video. Let's bring this up. Again, I could have skipped this entire tracking process, but I want us to get in as much practice as possible during this course, so we have a very good grasp of tracking within Blender. Let's hit detect features, and I want more features because I would like to rebuild this wall, at least where the reflection is happening here. So let's click on this and reduce the threshold. Hold shift so it doesn't move too fast. Also reduce the distance so you can get some in between points. I think this is all right. Yeah, let's set scene frames and prefetch, and let's track forward. Cool. Alt D to clear out those squares, then detect features at the end again and track backwards. And let's do one in the middle at 120. Detect features and track backwards, then come back to 120 and track forwards. And let's bring this up and delete some of these markers here that we don't want to have in our track, because we can clearly see these ones are haywire. I'm sure by now you have a pretty good grasp of Blender tracking, at least using this method. The thing with Blender is it's a tool, so there is no real set method for doing anything. You could just be playing around today and figure out something that even the Blender guru himself has not even thought of, just because that's just how Blender works. So I think this is looking all right. So let's bring this back down, and we have a lot of cool tracks. Let's make sure that car doesn't have a track. Yeah, there's no track on the car. That's good. I think we have deleted any track on the car. So let's come to solve and hit solve camera. We have a 6 pixel. That is good for a first number. That's good. Let's come to clean up and clean tracks. Bring this up till we have a few of them selected. X to delete and solve again. We have a 5. Clean tracks and solve again. Sometimes you have to do this a couple of times, but just make sure you have enough track points so at the end you have enough information in your scene. We still have a 5. Let's do it one more time. Delete, solve camera motion. Now we have a 4. Now we want to use additional information to try to solve this. So let's click on focal length and optical center. So Blender assumes what the focal length is from the information it's getting from the track points. So let's solve camera motion now. And that has dropped down to 8.5, which is good. But let's just do this one more time for good measure. Delete, solve camera motion. Now we have a 0.4. Let's work with this. I'll scroll down, click on, let's say here, somewhere in the middle, and set origin, then set up tracking scene. Make sure you have 1080 by 1920, and then select 3 of the markers on the floor to draw a triangle. So this, and floor. And when we bring this down here, we should see that it should be well tracked to the floor. Yeah. What you don't want is any vibration or shaking. You just want everything to seem like it's there. Cool, this was a pretty easy, sweet track. Let's move on. This is not a tracking lesson. Now in the layout tab, let's bring this cube up, GZ1 in edit mode. Okay, let's take out this light. I always forget to delete this light. Come into the camera view, click on the camera, come to camera, background images, and drag this up so you can see it fully. Now I used a Rubik's Cube instead of just a default cube here. So sorry default cube, let's just delete it. Then on CG Trader, let's search for Rubik's and free and Blender. I'm sure we'll see a lot of them. People love modeling Rubik's Cubes for some reason. Which one did I use? I think I used this one. Yeah, you could pick any one, whichever one works. This one looks quite interesting. Then free download. Let's download the RAW file. Now let's right click on it and extract all. And we should have this folder. So this is Rubik's Cube and this is the texture. So just open the blend file. You could also append this blend file. So depending on how you like to work, you could either copy and paste or append. So let's just click on this object here, copy it, and let's paste it in our blend file. So see, it's just like the default cube, but a lot nicer. Now let's make sure our texturing looks right. Cool. Let's delete these two folders that Blender gives us for free. So we just have this, yeah. Then let's come into our world, properties, color, environment, texture. And if we look at our scene, it's a pretty sunny day. You can see the shadow on this car. You can see the shadow from the building. It's kind of noon because we don't have long shadows. If it was long in this direction or it was long in this direction, it is more like morning or evening. But you can see it's not like really long, it's just here instead of like here. So let's go find an HDRI that matches this. I think I also used the White Street HDRI. So open, and here is White Street 01. Let's open it, go into our rendered view, come to cycles, come down to film, and make sure transparent is checked. Yeah, I think it's in a similar direction. Oh, something is happening with this material. Let's come to shading. Yeah, this guy didn't create an actual bump map. He just appropriated the same map he used for the diffuse. So let's just disconnect the normal. That should fix the issue. Yeah, we have our Rubik's Cube now. It's looking too shiny, too reflective. I don't know. It's not that bright. Let's come to our shading. Let's disconnect the roughness. Let's also disconnect this specular. It's deriving everything from this one texture. That's not right. Let's give it the roughness that we want. Let's make it a little bit shiny. So somewhere here. You know, Rubik's Cube are usually shiny on these black parts and diffuse on the colored parts. But yeah, let's just leave it something like this. Probably a 0.32. And let's bring this IR level down to like 0.5. Yeah, I think that's all for the model. Cool, now that we have this, we want to try to rebuild the scene. So what we want to do is to add this window over here. We are only interested in the window. We're not interested in the ground or these little things here. We're only interested in just the window. So to do that, you remember we come down here, just drop down and select motion tracking. So we can see all the data points, all our tracking markers. Like we talked about in the match moving lesson, you could rebuild each and every one of these cylinders. I think I should have used this clip for that match moving lesson. So if I hit Shift S just for an example and cursor selected, and I added a mesh cylinder here, and I scaled it down, and I scaled it on the Z axis, and I brought it down here, scaled it on the Z axis a bit, and brought it around here. This should be perfectly tracked to the scene. Yeah, because this was right on top of the cylinder. So let's bring this here a bit. So this is perfectly tracked to the scene. It's just following the cylinder wherever it goes. You can't even tell that it's there. So we need to do something like that, but for the mirror back here. So you can see some of the tracking points here. We have this here. We also have this here. We have this here. So we'd use these as a guide to recreate the geometry. So let's do a Shift S cursor to selected, which basically takes this 3D cursor. When you hit Shift A to add a new object, it spawns where the 3D cursor is. So you could use Shift right click to change the position of the 3D cursor. But if you want to get very specific, you can select an object and make the cursor spawn there. So I selected this, then I hit Shift S, cursor to selected. So you have it down here. So Shift A and add a plane. And let's rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees. Let's turn on our move tool and bring this down. Now what we want to try to do is to make sure, you see that the top of this glass is where our marker is. So we want to take this there and make sure it's aligning there. So let's click on this marker and make sure it's right on top. Yeah, it's right on top our plane. So let's take our plane here, bring it around here. Or let's use this, bring it up, bring it here. Yeah. Now for the other part, we have this one here. And we want to make sure, wow, this is way over there. Wow. This is why you do it with the markers, because if I just decided to scale this like this and drop it here, let's just do that first, it wouldn't work. You can see it's sliding. It's not stationary, it's not stuck, it's sliding, and that would really mess up everything you do after this. So I think the best thing we need to do is to follow the lines so it's accurate. Now, where's the other one? This one here. We want to make sure this edge of our plane is right on top of here. So click on this edge select. And where is, okay, it's here. Let's go to top view, right here, this one. So let's take this edge select and try to bring it over here. Just G and bring it over here. Yeah, that's more like it. Let's make this cube invisible so we can see what we're doing. Now that we have this here, this should be better tracked. Yeah, this seems like it's there. It's not sliding anywhere. Yep, it's exactly there. Cool. Now let's take the top, point select, come to the move tool. Let's bring this up here. Let's go into wireframe view so we can see things clearly. For the bottom, just line up where the glass is, where the mirror is. Let's bring this down here. Let's see if we can see the end of this. I don't think it comes out that much. Oh, it does. It does. Okay. So we have it here. So let's bring this down and here. So it aligns with this corner here. And the one on the top, let's also bring it here and align it here. Let's bring it up a bit, so here. Now we have this mirror settled. It looks like it's there. This is why you need these tracking markers. If we didn't have these markers, we would have had to guess where that point is in actual 3D space. You can see I thought it was just around here. I didn't know it had to be way over here. Now that we have this, let's make it a reflective material. So let's make it a mirror. So Blender has a glass shader. So let's come down to material and new. And instead of principled BSDF, let's select glass BSDF. Yeah. Now let's go into the rendered view. But then it has a roughness of 0.5, which is not how glass should look like. Glass should be roughness of 0. Or let's give it a little bit of roughness, like 0.01. Yeah. Now what we want is to see our cube in this mirror. So let's make sure our cube is visible and find the point where we'll be able to see our cube in the mirror. So if we have an object here in real life, we wouldn't be able to see it in this mirror. Just try to approximate where the angle of reflection is. Because if I have my camera here and I have the glass here at this angle, the way reflection works in like basic physics is your object should be around here. So you should come here, the light ray should come like this, bounce light off of this and come out here. So this guy should be on this line. So somewhere around here for us to be able to see it in the reflection. So let's see. Yeah, we can see it. Let's just scale this ball up a bit, not that much. Something like this. Let's bring it up. Cool. I think this is good. So we have this right here. Now let's take our floor plane, which is meant to catch the shadows, and make sure it's right under here so we can see our shadow. Let's scale it up and just bring it here. Yeah, so we can see our shadow on the floor. Let's try to make sure the shadow is not interfering with this car here. We don't want to worry about all of that. So let's bring both of them out here and make sure we are still inside of the reflection. Let's bring both of them out. Let's try to bring them here. Yeah, okay, this is even better. Yeah, this is even a better position. Yeah. Okay, because it's more in the center. So let's bring it even closer. Yeah, nice. Cool. Now we don't want this to cast a shadow. I think I'm seeing a shadow here. It's from this guy here. We don't want that. So let's click on the mirror. Let's first rename this to mirror so we know what we are looking for. Then come under here to object visibility and turn off shadow so it doesn't cast a shadow. Cool. Now we have this. I like this framing. It is right in the center of the screen. Yeah. Now let's just add a simple animation. Something simple, nothing too complex. Like just a simple rotation. And we don't want this entire timeline. This is just too long. So let's shorten this down to 120. And then at frame 1, let's hit N to see our keyframes. At frame 1, we want to hit I over the rotation. I'm not seeing my keyframes. Let's drag this down. Okay, cool. Now at the end, at frame 120, let's just hit RR and rotate this a bit. Yeah. Then hit I again to register the keyframe. Now, if I play it, you can see we are rotating. Nice. Then over here, hit T and linear. So it's just a straightforward animation. Cool. Yeah, like some supernatural floating Rubik's Cube. Now let's animate the location, which is something I did in the example. At frame 1, let's bring this down around here. Then right click on Z and insert single keyframe. Then at 30, let's bring it up. Okay, let me see the reflection so I can see what I'm doing to make sure it's still in the... Okay, cool. Let's bring it up here. Then right click, insert single keyframe. Cool, cool, cool. So let's copy this one from 1. Copy the keyframe, paste it at 60. Copy the one at 30, paste it at 90. Copy the one at 60, paste it at 120. So what this would do is to make our cube just go up and down. Yeah. But where's our rotation? Our rotation is not happening. Let's go to the last frame and add our rotation. I don't know why it disappeared. I. Wait, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Let's bring up the graph editor. This happens a lot when you're working on projects. Let's bring up the graph editor so you can see what is going on here. So let's look at just Z location. Yeah, that is working properly. We're going up and down, up and down, up and down. Then let's look at rotation. Yeah, we don't need these keyframes in the middle. Let's delete this one, X. Let's delete this one, X. Delete this one, X. Yeah, perfect. There was a keyframe in the middle. That was the issue. Let's go back to the timeline. Yeah, problem solved. So we have this sci-fi looking Rubik's Cube that is just rotating and bouncing in the air. We have already gone through the process of rendering this and compositing this with just the shadow, but now we want to see the reflection. This shadow is on top of our cylinders here. So let's do something. Let's click on here, Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift A, add a cylinder. Yeah. Now scale this down. What we know is that this marker is right on top of this cylinder. So let's go back to solid view and let's make sure this marker is right on top. Yeah, like right in front here. Cool. Now we know this one is the one on top. So let's scale this on the Z axis. So we have it from top to bottom. Let's see. Let's go into this view and make sure it is accurate. So bring it here. Make sure it is aligning. S, Shift, Z. I did not plan to do this in this lesson, but yeah, let's just explore it for another opportunity to learn match moving. So let's bring this up a bit and let's see if it's tracked. Let's just see if it's following. Yeah, it is perfectly match moved. It is following the cylinder just back to back. Cool. Now let's handle this curve here by selecting everything on top in edit mode and then rotating it. Just R to rotate, then scale, then rotate a bit, and bring it down and just try to align it. R to rotate, scale, and just try to line it up here. Yeah, what we can also do is to rotate it because we can see we are seeing the face of this cylinder here. So RZ to make sure our face is facing us. Yeah, something like this. Cool. It doesn't need to be super accurate, but then it needs to be there. So let's see if we can find this one, because this one doesn't have any marker on it, so we can't tell exactly where it is. But let's just try to approximate since we have this one here. But before we do that, we want to make sure this is right on the floor. We don't want any intersection because we are going to use the floor to know exactly where the floor is. So let's come to edit mode, come into wireframe view, select everything here, make sure it's right on the floor. Yeah. Now let's go back here and Shift D and bring it here, and bring it here, and bring it here, and just try to align this one. Since we know they are exactly the same size, let's try to align this to see if it works. I'm only moving on the Y and the X axis. Let's see if this works. Since we're just eyeballing it, this might not work, but let's just play and see. Okay, I think it works. I think it works. I think it works. Yeah, they are both following the cylinders. And the only reason we could get this one was because this one was very close to it. If we try to get something like this object here, Blender is going to be so confused because it doesn't really know exactly where this point is in space. But since we have these two, these are the two we should be worried about because it's the two that our shadow is being casted on, right? Yeah, these two. Yeah, just these two. Yeah, cool. So that's cool, cool, cool. So now that we have that, let's do a quick camera projection. So we are using all the lessons we have learned so far, just this lesson. So let's do a little bit of camera projection. Come into the shading tab, come into your camera view, come here, and then click on the floor. Where's the floor? Yeah. Let's turn off the shadow catcher so we can see it. Now, new, Shift A, image texture, open, and find your video. Now let's set the frames to 240. That's the frame of the entire video. 240. Then click on auto refresh. And let's connect the color to the base color. We can't see it yet, so let's click on Ctrl T. Make sure you're selecting the image texture, Ctrl T, and connect this from window to vector. Now we should be able to see the background video. Cool, now that we have this, let's increase the roughness here because this is a very rough floor. It's not glossy, so bring this down. And we can also mess with the specular and reduce it. And also, let's bring all this over here. Shift A, add in a gamma node. And let's try and match these two layers as much as possible. So bring this up until it's kind of matching. Let's also add a saturation, hue saturation value node, and just bring down the saturation all the way down. Then increase the gamma a bit. Yeah, I think we can work with this. Yeah, it works. It works. Now let's do the same thing for these cylinders. Let's click here and select our material. What was the name of this material? Material 2. So let's select material 2. Now it has the correct thing. But this is a reflective material. So let's click on this 2 to make a duplicate material. And let's bring down the roughness for this one because it's a reflective material. Let's bring it down here and increase the metallic. Yeah. Then for this one, we want to reduce the gamma. We don't want it to be that. Let's put it to 0. No, we don't want 0. Let's bring it up. try to make it match this. Yeah, this is better. Like a 0.8 should be good. Yeah, so this one, give it the same material, material 3. Cool. Now let's make all of them shadow catchers now. I think it's a little bit too dark, so let's bring this down a bit so it matches better. Yeah, indistinguishable. So let's click on this, come to object, visibility, and shadow catcher. Same for this, object, visibility, shadow catcher. Yeah, let's try to make sure this thing aligns with the object. So S Shift Z to make sure it is snug. And this one here too, S Shift Z to make sure it's snug. Yeah, now that I'm going out of the camera view, I can see that this cylinder here is not even under the shadow. So we didn't even need to do this one. Yeah, this one is not under the shadow, it's just this one here. Yeah, so still make both of them a shadow catcher, and also for this one, make this one a shadow catcher. And yeah, let's make sure this bottom matches. So let's come to wireframe view, make sure all this is selected, and bring this up so it lines up here. Okay, what else do we need to do? Now that we have all that set up, let's go to why we are here, the compositing of this reflection. So we are going to have to separate this into passes. Now if I come here to view layer, you see a lot of passes. Under passes, we see a bunch of passes here, a bunch of data passes, a bunch of light passes, all these things. You don't need to understand every single one of these things here. But what we're interested in is the glossy pass, because reflective materials are glossy materials. That is what handles reflections. So inside one of these glossy passes, you'd find a reflection of this Rubik's Cube on top of this mirror. So if you come down here, this drop down, if you click on this drop down here, under render passes, you see that it's showing combined. But here we can preview all the render passes, all these passes over here. So if I click on combined, we can check emission. Since there is no emissive material in the scene, we are not seeing anything here. If we click on our cube and make our cube emissive, so under emission, we make this a color and we increase it. Yeah, we are now seeing the cube. But since we don't have any emissive material, we're not seeing anything. So let's come here and come back to emission and change it to shadow catcher. Now you can see just the shadow catcher. You can see the shadow on top of here, and we can see the big shadow of our cube. So let's come down to glossy direct, and note this looks wrong. So let's check glossy indirect, and this is exactly what we want. This is glossy indirect, which is basically this, the reflection of the cube on top of the wall. So this is the pass we need to render. We need to render this independent of everything. So if we are rendering our scene separately, let's render just this. This is the image that we'll get, just mostly black everywhere, and then this reflection on this wall. So we could use some clever compositing tricks to make sure it looks right. Now that we know it's the glossy indirect we're interested in, let's change this back to combined, and let's set up our view layers. So let's come here, click on background and just delete it. We are not interested in this. Change this one to objects. And let's come here and add a new view layer. This time we're not adding a shadow view layer, we're adding a reflection view layer. Now let's also add the collections here. Add an object and also click out, new collection, add reflection. So in the reflection, we're going to add this plane. Now, if your floor is a reflective object, say it's a tile material, like an indoor tile material that is shiny, or something shiny anyways, as the floor, what you want to do is to duplicate your floor material and add a different floor material that will be the reflection catcher, not the shadow catcher this time. So you are doing the same exact thing we are doing here, where we added a plane here, but we are doing it on the floor. So that will be your reflective material that you're now going to render as the reflection pass, or should I say the glossy indirect pass, because now we know that glossy indirect means the reflective pass. So let's select the mirror and bring it into the reflection, and everything else, let's bring it into objects. Oh, one more thing I'm just realizing, it's not the entire plane that should have the gloss. Yeah, the gloss should only be on this side. So we need to model this side of the mirror to make sure this side is not glossy. Yeah, let's do that real quick. Make sure you're selecting your mirror, go into edit mode, edge select, Control R to add a loop cut. Let's add one here. Just click and drag it to this point. Yeah, to create the frames. Control R again. Add another one here. Drag it here. Control R. Add another one here. Drag it here. Control R. Add another one here. Drag it here. Yeah, there is one up. So Control R at the edge here and bring it up here. Let's do it down here. Control R, add one down here, and Control R, add one up here. So now we have the frames. So is there anyone that we're missing? Is there anyone we have not added yet? No. Okay, there's one. Control R, add this one here. Control R around here, add this one here. So let's make sure this is accurate. Let's come into vertex select, click on these two vertices, and let's bring it on the x-axis over here so it lines up. Yeah. If there's anyone that doesn't line up, let's adjust it too, because we're just eyeballing this thing. So let's select these ones and make sure they are accurately placed. Same thing here, select these ones, bring it over here so it's accurately placed, and also these ones, and just bring them over here. And these ones too, these ones, just bring them slightly. Same thing here. Here, let's just bring them over here. Yeah, I think we have it looking good. Okay, this one's down here. Need some correction. Bring it here. We are also accounting for any distortion that the camera might have added. So let's bring this around here too. So yeah, now we have modeled our frames. So let's see that in the rendered view. Cool. Now we need to make sure these parts of the frame don't have any reflective material on them. So let's come to material view, go into edit mode, come to face select, select this. I'm holding shift, this. Then we want to hit Control I to invert the selection and select everything else. Then hit the plus sign, then assign. Now you can see this is white, but we want it to be black. So new material and make it black material. Make it a little bit metallic and a little bit shiny. Yeah, we have this. Cool. So just these portions would show up in the reflections. Let's take a look at that and make sure it works. If you're having any weird artifacts like this weird lines here, you could fix that by adding more geometry. So we could go into edit mode, select all, right click, subdivide, and just subdivide it a couple times till you can't see any of the mess ups again. Now that we have this, let's go to the compositing. So make sure under here you have just your mirror in the reflection, and here you have the rest of the stuff. Also, let's come here to the objects pass. In the objects pass, you don't want to see your reflection, so just check it here. Hit this check mark so you don't see it. This is the only thing you want to render when you're rendering the object pass. So when you are rendering the reflection pass, let's come here, reflection. The only thing you want to see is a reflection. You don't want to see these guys. But we can't just disable it because it will take away everything, including our cube. So what we want to do is to set it as indirect. So come here, click on indirect only and select indirect only. What this does is we no longer see the shadow on the ground, we no longer see this, but we see their indirect effects. Now the indirect effect of this cube is reflection. But then there is actually a technical way to explain it. When you are having in ray tracing, which is the way Cycles renders, when you are having a light source coming from our HDRI and it's coming directly on top of the object, which is the cube, and coming back to the camera, that is direct lighting. So the camera is seeing the cube itself. But when you have a light source hitting the cube, then bouncing off of the reflective object, which is our mirror, then back into our eyes, then that is an indirect light. So that is basically the technical explanation. So now that we have this set up, let's go to objects and confirm this is what we want to see. Let's go to reflection, and this is what we want to see. Cool. We're not doing shadow compositing here because we already talked about that in the last lesson. You could add that if you want. So let's render one frame, just one frame. I think this frame is good. Let's come here. Let me change my render setting real quick to like a 0.2 and like a 50, and make sure use GPU is checked, and let's just hit render. Okay, now we have rendered just one frame, so we can see something in our compositing tab. So in the compositing tab, we don't need this yet, so let's just take these ones out. This one's in the middle, X to delete. We still have our movie clip. We have this layer, objects, we have this layer. Let's change this one to reflection. Yeah. So now this is how we build up the scene. As usual, if you want to do your compositing in Blender, Shift A, alpha over. Okay, I don't think we should have deleted that. Yeah, alpha over. Let's bring this one, the background, to the top. In Blender, background is always on top. Don't forget that. Then bring the objects on top of it. Then bring this to the viewer and to the composite. This is like the very basics of compositing in the compositing tab. Now, how do we add this to the scene? We do that with a mix color node. So let's mix what we get from here. So this is the output of the alpha over. We have mixed these two. This is what we are getting now, this image. We want to combine this image using the mix color node. So Shift A and search for mix color. Then on top, remember, this is the background. Connect the top here to the top. And then we connect this to the second one, but we don't connect the image. We don't want the image. Remember, what we are looking for is the glossy indirect. So make sure you are in your reflection view layer. Come down here to view layers and click on glossy indirect. Make sure it's checked. You see, what this does is under your render layer, it added this node. So you can see glossy indirect here. Now this is what you want to join here. So let's view this. Ctrl Shift click. Okay, I don't think we rendered the glossy indirect because we had not checked this. Now that we have checked it, let's just render again. Just render one frame. So Blender can render out your glossy indirect pass separately. So you see, that's the main pass. This is like the color pass. Okay, now you can see it. This is our glossy indirect pass. One thing to note is that your glossy indirect pass is noisy. Unlike your main object pass where everything is already denoised, you need to denoise your glossy indirect. To do that is also pretty simple. On the same place where you clicked indirect, click on denoising data. So you have more of these nodes here. Then Shift A and add a denoise. Then drop it in between. Connect the normal to normal. Connect the denoising and albedo to albedo. And yeah, that's it. We now have a denoised image. This is a noisy image. If we didn't do this, we are going to have a very noisy reflection. Now, this does not look correct. It's looking very weird. So we could fine tune it here by just reducing this factor from 1 to like something quite low. So you can see compositing down here. Yeah, now it's lower. Let's bring it even lower to like 0.1. And yeah, this is it. This is our reflection. We can now see it on top of the glass. So if we render this entire animation, we would have this, and Blender would now attach the reflection on top of the glass. You can see we are not seeing the actual reflection object. We are only seeing it in the glass. Now let me show you guys something else. Let's go back to our layout tab into render. Now we can see here we are seeing our HDRI file. Our HDRI image is reflected in here. If you do not want that, you could fix it in your shading tab. So this is useful in a lot of ways. If there is any situation where you have a reflective object and it's capturing the reflection of your HDRI when you don't want that, this is how you fix it. Under object, change this from object to world. Now what we need to do is to add a mix color in between these two. So Shift A and mix. Yeah. Now it's mixing it with white, but we want to mix it with black. So the rest of it will be black. Now hit Shift A and add a light part. Then connect your is glossy ray to the factor of this mix node. Now what this does is it makes the entire thing black. So you are still getting your lighting, your HDRI is still lighting everything properly, but now this looks black. So if you are doing like a product scene in like a studio setup, this will be very useful. You can make this white. So instead of getting the HDRI image in your product as a reflection, you are getting just white. So it's not like a light. This white is not lighting your scene, but it's just a color there. So let's make it black. Let's come back to compositing. And let's hit render to just see what that looks like again. Now our glossy indirect image has a black background. We can adjust the look of this by adjusting the factor. So if I reduce the factor to something very low, like a 0.001 or a 0.008 like this, now it's compositing. You can see it's looking a lot better. It's looking more like what a reflection should look like. Now let me show you how to do this in Davinci Resolve. So if you don't want to do this in Blender as usual, you want to export it to whatever software, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Davinci Resolve, this is how you do it. So add a file output node like we did in the last lesson. Come down to node. Let's change this to objects. I'm sure you know how to do this for shadows. Typically, if you're working on an actual project, you should have 3 view layers here. So object, shadow, and reflection. So you export everything separately. But since this lesson is focused on just the reflection, let's add just 2 objects and then reflection. So this will be the images that are coming out. So the object is this render layer right here, this one. Your objects, just drag this to objects. And your reflection will be this. We are not concerned about screen. All of this over here is used to composite inside of Blender. What we are concerned about is this and this. So we could have just connected directly from here, but since we did the denoise, let's connect from here to reflection. But just for illustration purposes, let me show you how to do the shadow thing too. Just again, so we can get in more practice. Let's add a new collection and call this shadows. And then in here, we would have our ground and we would have our cylinders. So since they are the shadow catchers. So this is our main object, the cube, and then these are shadows. So come here and add a new, call this new view layer shadows. Cool. Now let's come into compositing, and under this file output, let's add a new one, add shadow. So let's just click on this render layer and duplicate it and change this from reflection to shadows. Then connect the image from here straight to shadows. Now when we hit render, we are going to render objects, we are going to render reflection, and we're going to render shadow. Now the way you do compositing with these 3 things is first you add your background video, then you add your shadows, then you add your reflections, then you add your main objects. So now we're in Davinci Resolve. I'm going to show you this with the one I rendered earlier. Okay, just drop our background video here, then come to our media tab. Then we can see our objects here. Let's just take this 3, shadow, objects, and reflection. And let's drop it in the correct order. Now that we have our background video, remember the next thing we drop is our shadow. So take the shadow and drop it here. Now you can see we have our shadow right on the floor. And the next thing we need is our reflection. So take the reflection and drop it here. The next thing we need is our reflection. So take the reflection and drop it on top of it. So you can see this is a reflection, but since it's black, remember we used our screen blending mode. So click on the reflection, come down in Davinci Resolve. Under composite, you would see composite mode. Change this from normal to add, or you can change it to screen. Screen should be down here somewhere. Yeah, any of this would work. So let's just use add. Now we could reduce the opacity to something like this. Yeah, so it's not super in your face. So let's do something like, yeah, 22. That's fine. So this is what reflection should look like. Now we have our shadow and we have our reflection, but we don't have our objects. So let's come up here, take the object and drop it on top. So this will be what is on the very top. Now when I hit play, we have everything. See, the reflection is in the shot, the shadow is in the shot, and the object is in the shot. And now you could do your normal compositing, you could do your sound design, you could do your color correction. For example, this cube is too colorful, so you could reduce the saturation, you could bring up the saturation of the background. In the color tab, like we did in the last lesson, we could reduce the saturation of the cube so it matches properly. But then I don't think we should do that. Instead of doing that, we should increase the saturation of the background so it matches with the cube. Yeah, so they look like they live in the same space. But we can still bring down this one a little bit. And yeah, let's add our blurriness. So come to Fusion here. For this clip, make sure clips is selected here. For this one, we want blurriness of 0.4. So bring this down here, select a 0.4. for the reflection, which is this one here, we don't want a 0.4, we want something like a 1.2. It's not the main thing we are looking at, it's just a reflection, and it shouldn't be super sharp. Yeah. So you can make adjustments. You could also make color correction to the reflection itself. If you want the reflection to be more saturated, you could do that. Now it's more saturated. You could do whatever you want in here. So this is basically the entire workflow to achieve a very realistic result when you have a mirror or a glossy material in your scene and you need to catch that reflection. So you shouldn't be scared of scenes that have mirrors in them. If there is a glass on the side or there are a lot of reflective surfaces or you have windows, don't be scared of it. You could take the extra effort. I know it's more work, but you can take the extra effort to model the windows and then export it as a glossy indirect pass and get the results. Now we have almost come to the end of this course. I'm super excited. I hope you are excited also. In the next lesson, we'll take this an extra step. Now we know what we need to do in like 99% of situations where we need to composite the shadows, rebuild our scene and composite the reflections. But if you want to add extra effects, if you need cracks on the floor, you need smoke or whatever, how do you integrate that into your scene? That is what we're going to talk about in the final lesson.